All right. So, welcome to the Tourism AI podcast. I'm Kendall, and today we are launching a bit of a special three-part series. We are diving into Peter, his 2026 AI predictions for tourism. So, today I am joined by Peter, and he is the person who wrote all these. And we have Matthew with us as well, who recently joined the Tane team. You may have seen him in our last episode. He's bringing a really fresh Gen Z perspective to these predictions and to our conversations. So, really looking forward to digging in here. We're doing things a little bit backwards. You may have seen that typically we do a podcast episode and then we kind of write a blog about it and release it that way. So, this is a bit of a different system we've done this time. Peter has written a pretty extensive blog that you can find on our website. And our next three podcast episodes are going to be kind of digging into that. So, a little bit of an opposite way. Peter, before we kind of dig in, do you want to kind of give us a bit of a setup? Why these 8 predictions and why does 2026 matter?
Yeah. We had a conversation about writing a blog about the predictions of 2026. So I went ahead and did that. I really kind of just reflected on the last year. I reflected on the many conversations. December's been such an interesting month for us because we've had so many conversations with so many destinations, so many tourism leaders, just so many different people about kind of where they're at and what they need. And we have a lot of very exciting things happening starting in January. And it's really kind of helping a lot of those tourism organizations along the way. And so really, to me, these predictions came from a lot of those conversations, but also just I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of content about AI. I read constantly. So we talk as a team. We share a lot of things internally on our WhatsApp group. So we're constantly kind of paying attention and sharing and doing things and talking to, we're building software and talking to our developers and all kinds of things. So there's just a lot of conversations being had about the state of things and the state of where things are going. These came to me, these 8 trends were really kind of the things that are the ones that come up most often and the ones that I just think are really, really what I think kind of 2026 is going to look like.
Amazing. Thank you. So, prediction one is that AI literacy becomes non negotiable. This is what you've written is the foundation for everything else. So, we've kind of seen, I think people have been very curious about AI literacy. We've had lots of people reaching out wanting to learn more about it. But in 2026, you're saying that this is no longer an option. Everyone needs to dive in. What does this actually look like in tourism?
Yeah, so I think I will say the tourism industry is, known as a lagging industry when it comes to some of these things, and we've been at this for a couple of years now, and we've done quite a bit of training. But it really feels to me like now all of a sudden people are really coming to the table. You just sent me an email 5 minutes ago, Kendall, about somebody else asking about training, and so the evidence is all there. But I think beyond just what we're hearing from our stakeholders in the tourism industry and some of the conversations we're having, I think what happened was kind of at the end of 2024, we started to get kind of new tools and we started to get reasoning models and everybody started talking about agents. And I feel like in my gut feeling was that all of a sudden everybody took a pause on training. Maybe I don't need training because an agent's going to come in and solve all my problems. I think throughout 2025, I think people realize that that's not the case. I still need training, and I probably actually need training to figure out this whole agent piece. It's not, I think there's this feeling sometimes that it's just going to be some magic button. All of a sudden, AI is just going to magically do everything, and that's just not going to happen. So I really feel like, to me, people are starting to come to terms with, oh yeah, there's stuff to learn here. Like this isn't going away. I really need to this needs to be the core of my understanding about the new way of forward technology. And I just feel like people have been experimenting a lot and realizing what they don't know. Like I just feel like, for example, ChatGPT 5 when it came out, all of a sudden had this this router that all of a sudden the AI could pick a reasoning model to answer your question. And that was really the first time probably a lot of people ever used a reasoning model or ever got exposed to a reasoning model. And I think it was like, holy cow, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, whoa, this answer is very different. And it's doing different things. And, a lot of kind of innovation has been added to the AI space. And I just feel like all of a sudden people are now, I used to tell people like jokingly, like, using AI is like English, like, oh, I speak English, so therefore I'm a good communicator. I use ChatGPT, therefore I know how to use AI. And all of a sudden these tools became really robust and it's like, whoa, there's lots to learn here, right? So I just feel like people are finally coming to terms with that.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned kind of like AI literacy crisis in the blog. Matthew, you've grown up with this technology. So does this kind of literacy crisis feel real to you, or do you think it's overstated?
I think it's definitely important. I think it is for a couple of reasons actually. I think, I see it similar to adopting any kind of technology, even in like the age of the internet kind of coming up, like it was the same thing there where people had to adapt. Brick and mortar stores were struggling, so to switch to online versions of that to stay ahead of the curve or to stay with the competition that was adapting as quickly. I think this is very similar where the competition will seek out those competitive advantages and now it's definitely AI and how it, increases the efficiency. I think also for my generation specifically and kind of just on a more generic note would be, there's a concern with how AI is actually decreasing intelligence and how there's a risk there as well. And I think, I see it all the time when I'm scrolling through X or Twitter. Every comment now is at Grok. What does this mean? And it's like, people are using it now to take away from almost critical thinking skills, whereas, that's not necessarily the best use case. And that's not, when we talk about, tourism industries using it, it's not to take away from that and the skills that the humans have. It's to really help with, mundane, repetitive tasks that can be sped up. So I think there's a risk there as well with just generational changes of how kids are going to be, thinking down the line and how there's considerations that need to be made there on all levels.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's some good thoughts. It's having kids and thinking about just, that's what we talk about often is just agency, being able to kind of keep our agency in this state where we have access to all this information at our fingertips. So that's definitely going to be a critical piece. Peter, in the blog, you mentioned, companies investing a lot now into AI training. So one of the numbers that's being thrown around in here is Amazon investing 2.5 billion. So that's amazing. They have the budget for that. So let's bring it down to a bit more of like a smaller scale. So let's say a wilderness lodge in northern BC with 5 employees, or maybe like one of our clients with 2 employees right now. How do you tell them that AI literacy is a non-negotiable when they're just really trying to keep up with
Yeah,
everything on
yeah.
their
I mean,
business? Yeah.
I think it comes down to Kendall, really helping them know understand what they don't know and understand the value they can get. Like, we do our AI adoption framework. It's $1,500. It's for sure for some businesses it's a lot of money, but like $1,500 investment and a few hours of your time can completely transform your business. Like it's a lot of value, honestly, in terms of like understanding the fundamentals and understanding how to do context and engineering and things like that, and actually make these AI systems work for you. And so like, my experience always when I tell people is like, when people do this training, they all of a sudden they really start to see the value of what this means for my bottom line. And it doesn't become a cost anymore. It becomes an investment and it becomes, holy, I need to do more of this because I'm missing so much in terms of opportunity. And, that 5-person wilderness lodge is actually the best organization that's going to get the most value out of these tools with just a little bit of a little bit of help. And so, like, Amazon, it's like, man, they got like a lot, they're very complex. There's lots of systems, lots of process, very bureaucratic. Whereas like a 5-person wilderness lodge can completely transform their business in 30 days with like a $1,500 sprint. You know what I mean? If they just like really commit themselves. Obviously, there's more training we provide. There's other training out there. But what I would tell people is that whatever training you choose, make sure it's basically hands-on training, not theoretical training, because there's a lot of theoretical training and there's a lot of webinars and there's a lot of sit through and some guy telling you about all these amazing things. None of that translates. And I can tell you, I've done this enough times where I've done the webinar and then I've sat down on the one-on-one to actually get some people on tools. And it's like we're starting from zero again because they don't remember anything from the webinar. So really, it's important to get your hands on the tools and just having, again, somebody guide you. Here's 5 things you need to know that completely change the way this tool works. And so, it's not super complicated, but trying to figure it out on your own takes a lot of time versus, just spending a few hours with an expert that can like literally hold your hand through it and help you transform your business.
Yeah, Matthew, I was going to ask you, like, just in your perspective, why do you feel like more tourism businesses haven't invested in AI literacy so far? If it's this important, Peter, I kind of feel like maybe you answered that in part because maybe they've had that experience before where they've sat through a webinar and it just feels so impractical, like not really knowing how to use it, how to take what you've learned and like put it into practice in your own business. But Matthew, maybe I'll let you kind of give your take on that.
Yeah, I think Peter covered it for the most part. My first answer to that is I think that there's a lack of understanding of what AI actually is and what it can actually do, which causes, people, and I think going back to how it's more impactful on that smaller team, especially in smaller teams. If you see AI as this huge undertaking that only, large companies with dedicated IT teams can implement, of course it's going to be something that's daunting that you don't necessarily prioritize, and it's almost, the complete opposite, where it can be very easy to implement and very easy to get those instant wins and instant efficiency gains. But it really takes that understanding of what this tool is and how it works, rather than just, like Peter said, attending that webinar of just having things spit out at you and then figuring out, okay, well, now how do I actually apply this? I don't know how this AI works. I just was told to write in this prompt and then I would get a result. But really understanding what these tools do and how they do it is so important. I mean, it's the case with any tool that you use. It's really about that understanding piece. I think that's the biggest barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Peter, is maybe in the next 30 days, if you were an operator or you had one piece of advice in the next 30 days, what is one thing that they could do? I'll start with you, Peter, and then maybe get your take,
Yeah,
Matthew.
I mean, I guess I'll say selfishly take my AI intuition sprint or my, or some of our other training programs. And as much as I'm being self-serving about that, it's like I have seen and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people that have been to a lot of events and conferences. Every conference now has an AI speaker, and I am one of them. And the feedback I get often is that, wow, most people just kind of talk in high level theoretical stuff and it's over my head versus like very practical, useful tips, right? And so that's kind of number one. But beyond that is honestly just spend time with the tools. And the biggest cheat code with AI and the biggest amazing thing about AI is like if you don't know something, ask the AI. Like that is like such an unlock. So it's like, hey, I want to learn about you or help figure out how to do X, Y, and Z, and just ask it and it'll tell you. So it's kind of like awesome, right? But that's still hard because sometimes you don't know which questions to ask or exactly how to ask, you know what I mean? And so like I still think getting that sort of base level training will just get you that much further, that much faster.
Matthew, do you have anything to add?
Honestly, it was pretty copy and paste. Like
Yeah.
it goes back to just that understanding piece. And, I'm going to promote ourselves too, where we do that, at our webinars and the sprints and everything.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add there too, because I am kind of like, I see it firsthand, even in our organization, even where we are adopting AI at such a fast rate and our whole team is on board and we're all using it. I mean, we did a AI lunch and learn today because, we practice what we preach and we do team meetings. We try to do them monthly and kind of get together as a group and talk about it. And there are things that we are all still learning in the tools that we use every day. So, like you said, it's just it's that constant time on tools, talking about it as a team, and yes, so amazing to do the sprints and get that knowledge, but then just creating that space for check-ins and conversations about those things too.
Yeah, and that's a really important
Yeah.
point. I think every organization needs to think about sort of quote unquote rituals around kind of normalizing kind of AI discussions, maybe internal AI training. So maybe there's a champion in your organization that talks about how amazing AI is all the time. Well, like, give them space, give that person space to like show the rest of the team. You know what I mean? Because that person probably has some pretty awesome knowledge and they're doing amazing things. Like some of the stats actually show that like the AI adoption curve inside companies is so so not even. And so like you'll have like a super user that's like 10x their productivity sitting right next to somebody who like never used AI. And it's just like, so even inside organizations, you have this crazy divergence that's happening. And like, what an unfortunately lost opportunity to not have more knowledge sharing and like make that person like a champion of AI in your organization. So, as much as I self-serving hire us, but like at the end of the day, it's like also tap into your own workforce, ask questions, who's using it, have some rituals around conversations around it. Make it part of your regular conversation. I think you'd be surprised because the adoption is out there and people are using these tools and they're learning as they go.
Yeah. So we'll jump into your prediction number 2 here, which is AI reshapes jobs, not eliminates them. And I know 2025 was full of a lot of fear about AI and about AI replacing jobs. So you have written about in this blog, you got data saying that AI is going to replace tasks, not jobs, but tasks. So I'm curious to hear your differing opinions, perhaps, or maybe not. But Peter, let's maybe hear about this from your perspective to start.
Yeah, and so this kind of prediction actually came from this MIT report, and it was sort of a not reported on properly report, and big, it got fear mongered, I guess, or sort of got turned into some fear. And the report was about how AI can currently perform tasks equal to 11% of the labor market, is sort of how they framed it. But if you actually dig into that report, and then it got sort of put into the media as like AI is going to, can already replace 11% of jobs. And it's like, that is not the same thing. So like a job is a series of tasks, not, so like to say it can, perform tasks equal to 11% of the US labor market, that does not mean 11% of jobs. And so, and that sparked a whole big debate around this kind of jobs versus tasks thing. And, I think from everything I'm listening to and everything I'm paying attention to, like, yes, if your job is basically a task on repeat over and over and over again, you're probably at risk. But if your job is a series of tasks, including planning and strategy and communications with others and all these kinds of things, it's like only very small parts of that can be automated currently with AI. And so it's like we're a long ways away from those types of jobs completely being eliminated, if ever. They may never be eliminated, actually. And so I think it's an important kind of distinction here, and that's why I put it in here. Is like, yeah, parts of our jobs are going to get eliminated 100%. And actually in tourism, from everybody I talk to, even the tool we're building, they can't wait because those are the parts of their job nobody likes. So what the administrative slog and all the sort of like, back end stuff that nobody likes. We talk about this all the time, okay, so you have a Zoom meeting and you record it. Now it gets somewhere and now you got to grab that Zoom meeting and put it on, do something. It's like, there's a lot of not value added work that to me is like, I'd rather put screwdrivers through my brain. Honestly, it's horrible work. And so it's like, actually, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that could be automated and helped with AI that actually gives us opportunities to do more high value work and actually, especially in tourism, spend more time with our guests and provide better experiences and all those types of things.
Yeah. So, Matthew, I know you're at the beginning of your career. Does reshapes, not eliminates, feel reassuring? What is the chatter amongst your peer group, let's say?
Yeah, I think there's definitely there's a worry for me, I think, but I think for me personally, given that I consider myself a pretty tech savvy person, I try to learn as much as I can about these tools to kind of add to the value that I provide. And I think that that's a pretty important thing, is to say, like, it's not that everyone should just become AI experts and like IT, like coding people, but to know how, again, back to understanding how these tools work, that is of value. And that is like, if somebody replaces everyone in their workforce with an AI, but then all of a sudden you've also let go of the person who knows how the AI works, good luck to you when that goes down, or good luck when the new model comes out and you have to do a complete reset, or now, all your prompts are broken and nobody knows how it reads the information, or whether, all your projects are desynced or whatever. And so again, having that understanding, I think, adds to the value of your job. And I think, an example even too of like when like power tools came out, like people were still building things, like they weren't hand sawing back and forth, back and forth. They had a power saw or whatever, but the job wasn't gone. It increased efficiencies, right? And of course, yeah, you could have like a factory that could make it with robotics or whatever, but we're still out here like having people build houses. It's just more efficient, it's more safe, we're building better things. And so, but again, that becomes from an understanding of the tool. If somebody was so against that stuff and was like, no, I'm building by hand, like they're doing themselves a disservice. And yeah, then maybe their job is at risk because they're going to go to somebody who might, charge you a little bit less because it also takes them less time because they have these tools.
That's a really interesting perspective, actually, the comparing the power tools to like a hand tool. Because just to play devil's advocate, I would say that, some people might say, well, the handmade stuff, like the hammer, the things that take longer, better quality. So yeah, just kind of like some food for thought there as you're talking about that example. But definitely, I think the part that I agree with is that definitely makes it more efficient. That's for sure. So Peter, bringing it back to you, let's take a tourism role. Maybe like a front desk agent. What can you like walk through maybe what that might look like? What parts would be automated? Let's say what stays human, what's new.
Yeah, for sure. So, a good front desk agent example would be, okay, so you have your CRM connected to maybe some kind of chatbot or whatever, some kind of like mechanism to communicate with guests. And, as the guests have done their bookings and it's connected to your booking engine, you're building intelligence about that client and you're building some understanding about that client and their needs and their desires. Maybe they have a dog, maybe they, whatever. And so, really what the AI can do is help to, one, automate some of that communication, make that guest experience digitally more pleasant, anticipate some needs in terms of, just use the dog example. It's like, maybe they're going to be checking in or they just checked in and then the agent sends them an automated like, hey, can we come and maybe take your dog for a walk or check up on your dog or you know what I mean, that kind of thing. So the AI can really be an intelligence layer that can help facilitate a really awesome experience digitally. But obviously, the front desk agent still has a role to play in terms of like greeting like actually if the AI can do a lot of that stuff more automated in the back end, then the front desk agent has more time to show the person where the elevator is, or maybe take them for a quick walk around and show them the facilities, or come and provide them with a little more personalized service, bring the dog a cookie or something like that, right? And so one, it can, I think, make that front desk agent more better equipped to serve the customer better. So again, maybe Peter's coming in with his dog and you get some biscuits ready and you're anticipating and you can give the dog a biscuit or whatever, right? Just as an example. But also then can facilitate some of that back end communication. And I mean, we already see this in a lot of hotels, right? I mean, a lot of this stuff is automated in the back end, but I think there's more that can be done and it can actually provide a net better experience for the traveler. And it can actually free up the time of the front desk agent to spend more time human to human, providing an amazing tourism experience as opposed to, you know, inputting information into a computer, right?
Yeah, in our last podcast episode, we actually talked a lot about the personalization that AI can help with on the travel front. And, Matthew, you talked about like what would it would take to trust AI agents booking for you, and it would be like trusting it to make those hyper personalized recommendations. So just kind of flipping, what we discussed talking about today, if you walked into a hotel and they had all that information about you, like what kind of better experience would that be for you?
Yeah, I think if I had booked it through and I saw that there was AI integrated in that process, and then that's the result that I got of that more personalized service, not only from the AI, but actually, again, it freed up that person who was there to be more personal towards me. Like that instantly is a direct connect for me of like, okay, that was a good thing. That was like a great experience as a result of this AI, booking the thing for me or suggesting it to me. And I still had that, human connection and that it was more like trust building than if I had just, if that person was just not there, right? Kind of going back to like replacing the job. Like I wouldn't want to show up somewhere and then not have a human there at all. So I think that just adds to the value and the trust in, the way that they would implement the AI.
And I had an experience
Maybe,
like that actually. Sorry, I'm going to just jump in here, but
no,
we're
go
a
ahead.
Marriott member, Bonvoy member, and I don't know what they have from an AI systems perspective, but like I had a recent experience where I went into a hotel, I checked in, I went up to my room, and like 15 minutes later, somebody called me, like the front desk person called me, and it was like, hey, and like they basically were like, hey, just checking in on how everything's going. I know you're here on a business trip, and is your Wi-Fi working? And like had like, and I was like, man, like this was awesome. Like it was really personalized and felt really good to me. And so I'm assuming there was probably some AI helping or supporting or some, kind of information being gathered about me and the type of traveler I am or whatever. But it felt like a great experience. And that person had time to make that call and sort of make that personal connection, right? So it's just I think it's happening, but I think, again, back to that small lodge with 5 people, all of a sudden this makes, not beyond a Marriott that has maybe different resources. This makes this possible for, small tourism operators and smaller businesses and mom and pop shops and things like that.
Yeah, like imagine how long it would have taken that person to look through all of the bookings, every room in there, who's there, what are they there for, what is their name, what tier did they book or
Right.
whatever. That would have taken forever. But they probably just got a, little message from AI or whatever that had a summary of, hey, reach out to this person. It's been, a little while after they checked in.
Yeah, maybe you would even leave a review, Matthew, in that case.
If it had prompted me, like in an email after in an app or something, maybe, just maybe.
Perfect. Okay, we're going into our third prediction, which is that context engineering becomes core infrastructure. So most people haven't heard of this term. I would bet. Peter, what is it? Why does it matter?
Yeah, so context engineering, put plainly, is sort of understanding how to make your company context work for AI systems. So, AI systems are generally built on quote unquote the world's information, but it doesn't know all of the information about your business, what makes you special, your branding, kind of how you communicate to people, what value you bring, all of those like don't know those things, right? And so context engineering really is about sort of figuring out how to build that context in a way to make it valuable for these AI systems, or in other words, how to teach the AI about your uniques and your business and your kind of things to make it work more in a more tailored way for you. And so, we teach a lot of this in our training, but overall, I'm hearing more and more, and again, this is back to this agentic thing that happened in 2025, where everybody got really excited about agents. And then, it was like, oh, but actually agents need context. The agent, it's like sort of that garbage in, garbage out concept, right? Like if the agent doesn't have good information about your company, or if you have, I'm going to give a very direct example. You have a document and it has 18 versions and it's clear which one's the last version. And now you have an AI system reading all of those 18, versions. It's not clean data. It's confused. It doesn't know which one's right. And so it might quote the wrong thing, right? So a lot of this is just administrative cleanliness to some extent and some good housekeeping, but it's also building out sort of a set of documents. And so we talk about, for example, context documents. So getting an approved set of documents that are the documents that are kind of decided by everybody in your organizations that these are the documents that describe us best and most accurately, and then locking those documents down and then giving those documents to different users of AI systems to use those documents as context in whatever workflow or whatever sort of like system they're building in their AI. So that's sort of what it is.
Yeah, when you break it down like that, it sound like when you break it down, it sounds easy. It sounds easy to understand, but the term context engineering sounds quite technical.
Mhm.
So Matthew, when you hear a term like that, like, do you think that's something that your generation as digital natives just would hear and kind of like get the concept of, or does it sound like something that would be kind of hard?
I think right off the bat, there would be some difficulty. I think my answer also touches on my previous answer as to why I think more tourism businesses aren't investing in AI literacy. I think it's the understanding of how those AI tools work. Because, of course, it doesn't make sense if you don't understand that, again, to Peter's point, AI is trained on the world's knowledge, but it's not trained on your specific SOPs or your specific context. So, of course, it would then make sense that, okay, well, let's actually spend time making those context documents. Like the way that it produces it, I think people kind of can get stuck when something new like this comes out, they can get stuck in that mindset of it's just going to magically do everything.
Mhm.
And then that also, again, leads to a lack of thinking that or realizing that it's important to understand how it works, right? If you don't understand how it's getting this information, then you're not going to know what information you actually need to provide to it.
Absolutely. Peter, can you just like bring this back again? Let's just keep using the same example. So you have a lodge operator. They want to they want to create a custom AI assistant that's going to help handle guest inquiries. So like, what does context engineering mean in that specific use case?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think kind of, we always advocate for kind of a number of core documents. And so some like the essence, like the organizational essence context. So it's like, what is our vision, mission, core value? Why are we here? Why do we exist? Like what is our purpose as an organization? That's like a context document, right? How about, a service understanding context brief, right? So it's like, what services do we provide? Well, like what do those services look like? Things like that. That's context. Who's our target audience? That's context, right? Maybe the responses to questions that are the most common questions that come up, like an FAQ, right? Frequently asked questions document. So if we had, here's the 50 questions that come up most often for us. So if you took all of those different documents, you created documents about all those different things and you fed them into an AI tool and then kind of gave that tool instructions on here's a bunch of context or a bunch of information about our customers, about what we do, all about us, what's important to us, why we're different, and then all of the common questions that come up and all the answers to those questions. All of a sudden, now your AI system has a lot of good information to basically be your assistant to answer questions or to be your kind of guest inquiry assistant, right? And so that's just a really easy example to make people understand kind of what this means and how it works. And then, there's various ways to, obviously, like the simplest way is, what I call out of the box AI. So like a chat GPT, you can build something called a custom GPT. So that's about sort of orchestrating that context. Okay, I want to build an assistant that answers guest questions on brand. Well, then we need to figure out which of those context documents to put together into that custom GPT or that little mini AI that's built on our context so that it knows how to answer on brand, right? And that's like a very concrete example.
Yeah. And just as you're walking through that, I'm just kind of, bringing it back to if somebody is a very, very beginner and hasn't done any of this, that still might sound a little bit overwhelming. But Matthew, you've sat through 2 of our intuition sprints now. You started last month and you've been already so instrumental in those intuition sprints where we've talked to those clients about context documents. So, if someone's like, oh, that doesn't sound very doable, like what would you have to say to them now that you've kind of experienced it firsthand as well, working with these small operators?
Yeah, I think I would just try and reframe it because, to me, it makes complete sense. I think, if this AI is meant to, again, not replace someone, but replace the tasks that someone once did, how was that person doing that task in the first place? Because I don't think you just hired them and then said, okay, answer all these questions for these people. You don't know what the answers to the questions are. You don't know how to answer the question. You might answer it and that might not emulate what the company is trying to come across as in terms of tone. So you train them. Of course, you have SOPs, you have documents that they have references to, of like, this is how we do things, this is our knowledge base of things that you'll be able to know to answer questions. And so it is doing exactly that, just in a different way. We're just formatting the training for AI to understand. And yes, it is, an upfront investment, but also so is training a new person. And so it's the same thing where it's that initial investment for payoff continuously in the future.
Yeah. And that's a great, I'm just going to jump in. And the analogy of a training a person is the exact analogy, right? It's like, and I use that analogy in my presentations sometimes. It's like, you don't bring Matthew in and on day one say, okay, write me a strategic plan, right? He needs a little bit of context about what was the old strategic plan? Who do I talk to? Like there's a lot of information Matthew would need to do to write a strategic plan. And so it's this exact same concept.
And just like AI too, like if I'm coming in and I don't have the context, yeah, I could go and research myself or try and look up as much as I can, but I'm limited. And what I'm going to learn will not be like what I would if I was properly trained. So AI is the exact same way, where you can't just take it out of the box and say, okay, make me something from this, or do this thing. And then it's going to try and grasp onto these clues or understanding of the company. And you're not going to get a good result.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you both. We're going to wrap up this episode there with these 3 predictions. And our episode next week is going to be tackling the other 3 and then the last 2 in the following episode there. So today was really the foundation, AI literacy, how jobs transform instead of disappear, and just why context engineering is so important. Just before we sign off, is there kind of one thing you would like people to remember from what we've discussed today, or kind of like the number one thing to take away?
Yeah, I think for
Peter,
me,
let's start.
honestly, kind of what Matthew just talked about, which is really think about your AI as like kind of humanize it a little bit. And basically, think about it in context of like, really it's just like bringing in a new employee and what do you need to do to prepare that employee to be successful. And I think if you think about AI in that way, I think it makes it a little easier to understand kind of effectively on how these AI systems can work for your business.
Anything to add, Matthew?
Yeah, I would say just be open and willing to learn these things and take the time to learn how these things work, and also kind of like reset what your mindset is on whether you think AI can be useful. Because I feel like people kind of get stuck in like, well, I don't think that we need that, right? And be open to discovering how it works, because that is going to be the path and to understanding where it'll be applicable for you.
Great. Great advice, guys. Thanks so much. So, in the next episode, we are going to be tackling agentic AI, some multi tool strategies, and why your SEO efforts might not matter in 2 years. So, it'll be interesting conversation. We'll link the podcast and anything else we discussed in the description below. So, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next episode.